Hello, fellow growth givers. What I want to talk about today are the three primary challenges or issues that prevent small business owners from scaling, from growing from a team of me to a team of we. And this is inspired by a talk I actually gave at the Osborne Business Association. And it was like a short amount of time. Like I only had like 10, 15 minutes to run through it. And I felt satisfied, but unsatisfied. And I wanted to add a little bit more meat on the bones to talk a little bit more about mindset, right? The how-tos, you can find them on the blog, catch JS Buford. But I wanted to explain a little bit more of the reasons why dealing with these three issues is so absolutely important. So one of the primary issues that hurt a lot of small business owners, particularly during the pandemic, but quite frankly, during any economic downturn. I remember 2008 vividly. This was the same issue. 2000 during the dot-com bubble, same issue, right? The bottom line is you're going to have downturns in the economy and upheavals, and you have to be prepared for them. And these three challenges that business owners have are the primary reasons why a lot of them don't survive, right? So the first being business credit, right? And establishing business credit. 75% of the time, when I'm working with business owners, whether they're earning $20,000 a year or whether they're earning $20,000 a month or they're earning $20,000 a week, it's insane. A lot of business owners still haven't learned the business credit game. They haven't understood why having access to a Dun & Bradstreet number and understanding their paycheck score, why these things are so important, and is one of the primary reasons why business owners come up short. The bottom line is, look, if you are utilizing your personal resources, so your 401k, your 403b, your simple or your SEP or your Roth or a traditional IRA, whatever the case may be, look, I don't knock that. I do not defecate in people's cornflakes. Sometimes you do what you have to do, but you don't want to have to do those things. You don't want to have to continually tap into your retirement assets. You don't want to utilize your personal income if it's not necessary. You don't especially want to utilize your personal credit. Look, this is the issue. If you're utilizing your personal resources to not just launch your business, but also sustain your business, what ends up happening is if some economic turmoil or some challenge happens, look, BS.com happens all the time, divorce, car accident, any number of different things. What ends up happening is when the business comes up short, you come up short. It's a double slap. So not only does the business become insolvent, but because you've dumped your monetary resources, your personal financial resources into it, your business credit takes a hit. Your finances are all tore up from the floor up. And that's why it becomes so much more difficult to recover. When they talk about business owners who will never open their doors again, when they talk about business owners, that 40%, right, that unfortunately didn't make it through the pandemic, that will never open again, I guarantee you 99% of them, the situation was a lot of their revenues were predicated upon their ability to use their personal finance to support the business. So that is one of the primary reasons why you want to get out of utilizing personal credit and learn business credit. And once again, you can go to Catch JS Buford, my blog, and I have an article that details step-by-step how to begin this process, right? Look, here's the other thing. The advantage to utilizing business credit is simply this. When you have a personal credit card, let's say you have $1,000 available to you, right? And personal credit card availability credit. Use $800 of that. That hurts you, right? I think it's approximately 30% of your credit score is predicated upon usage. And what they really want to see is your usage closer to 25%. And so if you're at 80%, it drives down your personal credit score. Look, when you establish business credit and you begin the process of establishing business trade lines, and when you eventually get that business secured card, or when you eventually get that business unsecured card, if you used if you have 1,000 available and use 800 responsibly, right? You're making the payments. You are staying on top of things. The financial institutions see that, and they don't see it as a negative. They see it as a positive. Oh, we gave you some capital, or we made some capital available to you, and now you're using it and using it responsibly. Well, guess what? If you're using it responsibly, that means you're probably growing your business. You're investing in your business. We want that because if your business is scaling, if your business is growing, if you're doing more revenues, which means you're going to be expanding and all the expenses associated with it, you're going to use more. So how about we give you a little bit more? Instead of 1,000, let's give you a cool 5,000. See what you do with that. And then you turn around and utilize the $5,000 wisely, right? You use that money wisely and they see you utilizing it wisely. And so then turn around and say, hey, let's try 25K. Let's see what transpires there. You see where I'm going with this? You're actually rewarded for the utilization of credit when you do so responsibly, when you do so intelligently. So that's the other reason, right? With personal credit, what ends up happening, utilizing your personal credit to fund your business, and you are damaging yourself, not irreparably, but sometimes it takes a long time to recover when you've done some damage to yourself personally. But with your business, no, you're actually rewarded for utilizing the monetary instruments that are made available to you to grow your business. So that's another reason why you want to focus your attention. You walk into a bank with damaged personal credit, or say less than good, okay? They may, really not in the bank, but some of these financial institutions, they'll approve you for, $400, $1,000 or something like that. You repair your credit and then you end up getting approved for credit limits of $2,000 and $3,000, but you're looking at 20%. And a whole bunch of other stuff that you're not going to like that's not favorable when you don't have the best credit cards. Business credit, a little bit different. You walk in there, you're establishing a new business credit profile. I imagine many of you who are listening to this, you either haven't done so yet or you're new to it, right? So you're still establishing a business credit profile. Once you get your paydex score up to 80, it's like the equivalent of having a FICO score of 700 and above. What ends up happening is you're not getting approved for 500. You're not getting approved for 1,000. You can literally look forward to being approved for larger dollar amounts as well. So you're starting at 5, 25, 50. I know business owners who began building their business credit profile. Now, look, there's no pie in the sky. There's no man that's going to fall from the sky because you make smart decisions, okay? But I know small business owners after a 6 to 9 month period of time were literally looking at a situation where they were able to walk into financial institutions and secure $75,000 to $100,000, okay, and available business credit, whether it be a loan or whether it be a credit line, which would be preferable, particularly given what's transpiring in the economy, right? Well, talk to your CPA, talk to your accountant, talk to your banker. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to try to dispense financial advice. It's not what I do here. So that's why these things are important, right? Because now you have a nest egg. Most small business owners, and particularly micro business owners, if they just had an extra 20, 50, maybe even 75,000 over the last 2 years, and for the next year, they'd be good. A lot of small businesses went out of business because they just didn't have enough capital to either continue paying employees, paying themselves, keeping utilities on, right? They didn't need $1 million infusions. They needed something to stem the tide, right? And that's why this is so important. You got to go out and establish business credit. And then once again, I'll end where I began with this particular issue. You have to establish a business credit to protect yourself personally. Look, you can rebound if your business falters. You can. There are a lot of different methodologies, strategies, and tools that you can utilize if your business goes belly up. You have to end up filing bankruptcy, business bankruptcy, things like that. You can recover from that. And you can recover from that relatively fast. When you have to do these things when it comes to your personal matters, it's not a good look. It's so absolutely important. And it's one of the primary topics that I broached last night. I just firmly believe that the majority of business owners would have been saved if they had business credit, particularly the small business owners. I'm talking specifically small businesses for about 20 employees or less, which is the majority of them, right? That's the majority of us. All right. Number 2, not documenting your process and not understanding how big of a role is that plays when it comes to duplicating your process. If you're having trouble scaling from a team of me to a team of we, I'm telling you 90% of the time, that's what it is. Think about it. When you first started out as an entrepreneur, there was a motivation there. You were trying to solve a problem, right? And that problem could have been personal in nature. It could have been a problem that you observed somebody else was dealing with. Oftentimes, business ventures are started out of monetary need, right? Someone is on dire need. They're literally laying on the floor and utilizing the oven to keep heat in on their home and burning candles. And, you draw a line in the sand, you start a business. But that business is usually still solving a specific problem or issue, right? And then as you begin to solve that issue, hopefully your core values, the principles, the things that really kind of determine your modus operandi, how you treat people and determine your long-term goals and vision for yourself. Those core values begin to color your business as well, right? So your business, when you're first starting out, it's almost like an extension of you, almost similar to being an activist, right? Activists have thin skin because they can't hide behind anything, right? You see what it is. Same thing when you're an entrepreneur. So your core values, the things that matter most, your principles, the things that really characterize, or should I say, determine your character, are like there right there in the beginning, right? So that's why I always have to be vibrating in a positive way. So what ends up happening is, okay, you are solving a problem. You have your values defined, or your principles are kind of coloring everything you do in terms of how you treat people, engage, et cetera, building your brand and reputation, right? And then what ends up happening is you start to beta test, right? You start to share your ideal. You start to engage individuals. You start to expose and contact individuals to what it is that you're doing. And you start beta testing, right? You start seeing how people are responding to it. You start checking out what objections people have, and you start learning how to overcome those objections, and you start leaning in, meaning you start saying, okay, this is great, right? It serves product, service, saying it's fantastic. Family, friends, they'll say everything is great, what you're doing oftentimes. And then you lean in and say, well, how about that $50? How about that $1,000? How about that 5,000, right? If it's so great, show me how great it is by you willing to patronize me. So you start beta testing, right? And this is the process. And you realize at some point, okay, you're learning what works, you're learning what doesn't work, and you're learning some things along the way, and you have this like a moment where you're like, oh shit, this dog has legs, right? I can run with it, right? And so part of that learning process in the beta testing is you're going through typically about 100 individuals, right? You're doing a Project 100. It just doesn't feel like it because if you haven't been exposed to a Project 100, you don't know formally what a Project 100 is. But ideally, you are exposing, talking to, you've literally approached 100 people, right? And that's where 90% of your learning is going to come from. And so you've beta tested, you've gone through your 100 people, people are patronizing you, you're like, oh shit, this is going to work, it's going to work out. And then, you start to realize, okay, there's some things I need to learn. So skills, talents, knowledge base. But keep in mind, all these things are a process. For those of us who are entrepreneurs who've been in business for longer than 2 years, you sometimes forget that. The knowledge you have, the skills and experience and talents that you've acquired over the course of time didn't happen overnight, right? There were probably books, there were probably videos, there were probably conferences, hard knocks. All these things have become part of your DNA, right? It's a process. And this is going to be important when I lead to how to make sure you utilize these processes to duplicate. You learn self-leadership, self-discipline, right? You probably have some type of modus operandi or some type of itinerary that rules your life. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for you to be consistently successful in business. So I know you have an itinerary. And if you don't have an itinerary, that's your itinerary. But you have an itinerary, right? So self-discipline, self-leadership, right? Making sure that you are remaining committed to your commitments and following through on your word. And quite frankly, foregoing some things so you can have some things. You've been willing to give up some things so you could go up, right? That's all part of that process. You have an internal script that you begin to develop, right? An internal story of what it is that you provide and what your value prop is. And once again, it becomes part of your DNA. People ask you what you do, it just naturally rolls off your tongue, right? Or even if it doesn't naturally roll off the tongue, it rolls off your tongue. You figured some of it out if you've beta tested, taken on clients consistently enough to start your business. You have an internal script and story. So remember this, right? That these are things that have to be documented and accounted for. And we're talking about growing from a team of me to a team of we. The other thing that you have going on at this point is you now have understood something. You've been in business for about 2 years. You understand how to find your clients. Trust me, you do. You have some type of methodology. You may not realize it because you've just been doing it, but you develop a methodology to identify and find your clients. You know where they're at. You know how to call, market to them, use social media, whatever tools, strategies, you know how to find them. Then the other thing that you know how to do is identify who your real target audience is. You know who your ideal clients. I'll ask business owners, who's your target market? They'll say, everybody. No, they're not. You know who the high income earning, high payoff clients you're working with are. And if you don't, it's a conversation for another time. Contact me. We need to chat about that. But the bottom line is, else you wouldn't be in business. Trust me. You know who your ideal clients are. Maybe you haven't thought critically about it. You haven't really identified their categorized their characteristics or demographics, but you know who they are. Understand, there's a process. You also have a process for onboarding people. So you share information with people, you find them, you tell your story, they decide to do business with you, and you have an onboarding process. And literally, I'm talking about onboarding, meaning from how you collect their money or their commitment to what database or information you're putting their information, the whole 9 yards. There's an onboarding process, right? Where you're building trust and respect and credibility and all that fun stuff. And then there's a delivery process for your product or service. You have a delivery process. And once again, it's in your DNA, so you just do it. You're not even thinking about it as a process anymore, right? But you have one. And then you also have a retention process, and ideally a process to make sure that your clients are happy, right? Because happy clients, they do more business with you. People conduct business with people whom they like, know, and trust. And when they like, know, and trust you, they're happy. And when they're happy, they continually do business with you. And then more importantly, also bring you referrals, right? And that is the bee's knees. When you have brand ambassadors out there who are referring other people to you. And you have these processes, if you've been successful over the long term, you've built a network of brand ambassadors. You haven't been purposeful with it. It may not be a lot of brand ambassadors, but you have brand ambassadors, okay? So these are the processes that you have. And once again, all these things are in your DNA. And then what ends up happening, right, as you've gone matriculate through this process, when you're ready to go from a team of me to a team of we, it's because you've realized you need to solve bigger problems or you need to solve more problems at scale. And then that's when you realize, okay, I got to go from a team of me to a team of we. I mean, you have to involve other people, or as I like to speak of, you need to involve other talents, right? And individuals who have skills and talents you may not have or have time that you don't have to execute. So you can either solve bigger problems or so you can solve more problems at scale. And then this is when the shit hits the fan, right? Because here's the thing. In order to go from a team of me to a team of we, first thing is you got to have values. And it has to be documented. You can't assume just because you had a conversation with someone about the things that matter most to you and that you embody, although these things are very important, that you embody your principles and values. These things need to be accessible. They need to be tangible. It needs to be in documents. It needs to be in form of reminders. You need to have meetings. People need to know what your core values are, or else they're going to be mercenaries. They're just coming to collect a check, right? And this is why I said one of the biggest challenges that small business owners have, particularly micro business owners, if you haven't documented this, because at a certain point, when you're going from a team of me to a team of we, what works doesn't necessarily work anymore. You got to do what duplicates. If it doesn't duplicate, it doesn't work. In other words, other people can't fall in and learn what your values are, learn what your core focus is, the reason why your business exists beyond making a profit. You have mercenaries. So of course they're leaving early. Of course they're not staying late. Of course they're refusing to be accountable and responsible. So you end up being a bottleneck, putting out every single fire and issue because they're not raising their hand to participate because they're there to collect a check. Look, think about it like this. Athletes, sports coaches. We know there are coaches where athletes will damage themselves irreparably on the field and off the field to serve the greater good, the values, the core focus. They're motivated and inspired by the coach. They're motivated and inspired by the system. They're motivated and inspired by the vision that's been articulated. And we know they'll do that. Well, people do the exact same thing. People will arrive early. People will leave late if they bought into the mission, if they bought into the purpose, if you've given them a track to run on and something to grab hold to, right? People, you heard that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You got to give people things to, they got to care, right? In order to identify with you. You got to find a way to engage those heartstrings, if you will. And if you haven't done that, that's the reason why you're having trouble. You got mercenaries. That's why defining your core values are so absolutely important. It's not enough to articulate them. They have to be defined. Okay. Also, look, if you don't have core focus, you haven't identified who you serve, you haven't identified how you serve them, then you can't create systems of accountability, right? Who you serve, how you serve them. If your sales staff or your client services staff don't know who your real target market is, they don't know who your real ideal client or buyer persona is, then look, it's like taking a shotgun and shooting it, right? You're spraying it all over the place. You want to be more like a sniper at some point in your business. You want to know who provides the greatest ROI in terms of edification you receive from helping people, but also in terms of compensation. And how you serve them matters, right? These things are absolutely important because once again, how can you hold people accountable if these things aren't clearly defined? And that's an issue, that's a challenge. The other issue and challenge that individuals will have is, think about it like this. The Patriots, they have something called the Patriot Way. Whether you like them or not, they have something called the Patriot Way, right? They've been successful over a decade. Still successful, even after the departure of Tom Brady. There's a culture there. There's a system in place that's working. Same thing with San Antonio Spurs, right? They remain a respectable organization, And every couple of years you look up and they just pop up and all of a sudden they're winning, taking aim at the championship. Trust me, there's a culture, there's a system there in place that's been established. In order for you to have the Patriot Way or the San Antonio Spur Way or your way, right? Say your business is named ABCCD Company, the ABCD Company way. It's got to be clearly defined, right? And that means every process that transpires in that business has to be accounted for. And when I say process, I mean you got to do a deep dive, because once again, you're assuming that things are in your DNA. They're not, right? You have to literally define who they are, your target market. You got to define it, ideal clients, so they know who to focus on. You have to define how you make contact with people. What's your strategy? What's your script? What are you saying to people? Whether you meet them in the elevator or whether you're belly to belly with them. These things got to be defined. You got to give your employees a track to run on. If you don't give them a track to run on, then you can't hold them accountable to anything. So look, I mean, I hear this stuff out there. The job market is terrible because employees suck, they're lazy, this A, B, C, D. And look, a lot of that may be true, but one of the first tenets of leadership is you accept responsibility first. Before you turn outward, you look inward. What could you have done to make sure that the ground was fertile for the success of your business, right? You got to take responsibility even when it hurts sometimes. That's just part of the deal if you want to go from a team of me to a team of we. So the first thing you got to ask yourself, do I have these systems in place to hold people accountable? If you don't, you can't be blaming employees when there's a lack of leadership. So, okay. Sorry, kind of took flight there from it. So, look, how you make contact, how you find people, that has to be documented. What do you say? How do you, once again, onboard individuals? What does that conversation sound like? What procedures, paperwork, steps? What are you doing to put people at ease? The whole 9 yards. It has to be documented. People have to either, and it has to be mentored too, depending on the nature of the work that you're doing, right? How you deliver the service or product, how it's manufactured. All these things need to be systemic, right? It needs to be so simple that a 3-year-old can wake up and execute the majority of it. I'm just being real with you. This is the process. These things have to duplicate. It's not what works. What you've been doing is work for you. But in order for you to scale, you got to do what works for others, which means you got to put things simple, Simon, kiss your business, keep it so simple so other people can duplicate it, okay? Once again, how do you gauge happiness? It's got to be a process, and it's got to be written down step by step. You got to take, some people say, I don't have time to do this. You don't have time not to, because the next financial, emotional, psychological, physical pandemic will be upon you in a moment. You need to do this, or you're going to be part of that 40% that gets wiped out periodically when bad things happen. Look, how do you retain your clients? Then once again, every single step. If you're sending videos, you're sending emails, you're sending text messages, you're following up periodically, happy birthday, happy anniversary, all that fun stuff. All the stuff needs to be documented. All the stuff needs to be accounted for, okay? What tools, strategies, and procedures to maintain accountability? These things need to be implemented too. So whether you're having IDS meetings, whether you're using Slack and you're having powwows every now and again to kind of go over goals, go over vision, go over core values, put out fires. You need to have a systemic process of doing this, right? You can't just do it one time and think that your business is going to run on autopilot. No, it needs to be maintenance taking place, right? And the maintenance doesn't need to be heavy duty. In the beginning, this is heavy lifting, right? If you haven't done it, you've been in business 2, 5, 10 years, you haven't done this yet, it's going to be some heavy lifting. You're going to need some assistance, right, to help you do this. Because once again, it's in DNA, you're doing it naturally, probably not even observing some of the things that you're doing. But once you have these things in place, there's a degree of maintenance that's required. And the maintenance is like not very time intensive, because if you're doing these things, you already have now a culture of accountability. You have a culture of responsibility in the organization. So the employees are taking responsibility and they want to take it, right? Because they bought into the core values and focus of the business. All right. So if you don't do these things, you're going to become the bottleneck, right? So once again, if your world gets turned upside down, your business gets turned upside down. If you're out of commission for a while, your business is out of commission. You can't scale that way. And if you can't scale, like I said, when the BS.com visits you, because it will, it's going to turn your business upside down, right? So that's why this was important. Now, the last thing that's important, and I got to wrap up here on the timeline. Should have started this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to get this out while it was top of mind, while I was still fresh from the talk yesterday. Look, I hear people oftentimes say, well, I don't want to set goals because it doesn't work, okay? I get it. I understand. I empathize with you, because number one, majority of us are not taught how to set goals. Goals are skill trade. Okay. Just like anything else worthwhile, anything else valuable, goals are skill trade. People oftentimes will try to set goals once, twice, maybe once per year. No, goal setting is an ongoing process. It's something you need to be doing on a real minor level on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. It's skill trade, and it takes time. It takes years. Just like it takes years to be a doctor, just like it takes years to develop the acumen to be an effective attorney. Goal setting takes years. It's a process, okay? But also goal achieving is a process. You set goals, but then you have a process to achieve them. But okay, I'm deviating. Go to Catch JS Buford, talk a little bit more about that. Look, you have to set goals if you're going to scale from a team of me to a team of we. Okay, you personally might be able to get away with it. You don't have an itinerary or a plan for yourself. That's going to be a problem. But especially if you think you're going to grow from a team of me to a team of we, you got to have a vision. You got to be able to paint a vision that people can see, buy into, and they can see themselves being successful in, which means you got to have goals. You got to have milestones where people can kind of sit back and take inventory and assess whether or not progress is being made, right? That's what goals are. They're milestones, right? And you have to be able to give your team direction. If you're not setting goals for yourself personally, if you're not setting goals for the business, you're not going to be able to sustain that team, because people look for leadership. They look for guidance, and they look for signs of progress, right? You need to understand what your KPIs are. If you're not setting goals, you don't even know what your KPIs are. Your key performance indicators, your revenue generating activity, the things that matter most, the things that make the biggest difference in your business on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis to determine whether or not your business is growing or whether or not it's receding. That's why this process is so absolutely important. And, don't have the bandwidth right now to actually go deep into this, but understanding that goal setting process is so absolutely important. So these are the three things, right? Business credit, get out there, establish it immediately. You got to document your process. Okay, you got to document. Remember, everything that works doesn't duplicate. And if it doesn't duplicate, it's not going to work for your business when it comes to growing from a team of me to a team of we. So you got to cover these things, your values, your core focus, your way of doing things, every process, document it, give your employees a track to run on, else you cannot create the accountability. And then, of course, you got to start setting goals. You have trouble setting goals, we have a conversation about it, right? But you got to start setting goals because people need a vision. They need milestones. They need to be able to track progress. They need to see that the business is growing, and they can see themselves growing in the business to do the things that they want to do for their family and to develop professionally and personally and otherwise, okay? And you need to know what your KPIs are so you know on a day-to-day basis whether or not you're moving the ball forward. Because as you know, as an entrepreneur listening in, you can be doing a lot of work, spending a lot of energy, but still nothing's moving forward. You do, oh man, that's painful when you're in a business. Paying expenses, you're waking up every single day just to pay utilities, pay phone bills, pay salaries, but the business isn't growing. I mean, basically now the business owns you. It doesn't feel like you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. You feel like you have a job, right? You don't want to be about that life. So look, as always too, smash the like button, subscribe, right? That's how I gauge. That's one of my KPIs to find out whether or not this information is landing and whether or not it's effective. And if you like what you heard, you want more of it, that's a KPI. That's an indicator to me that producing this content is worthwhile for you, and it helps me too. So with that being said, everyone, I celebrate success in advance as always. Goodbye for now.